morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Sip&Talkers, no matter what time zone you are tuning in from right now. Welcome to Sip&Talk. I'm your host, Joe, and I gotta say, I am in a fantastic mood today.
And I'm your co-host, Sunny, and yeah, I've got my massive cup of coffee ready to go, so how are things on your end today?
Oh, I'm doing great, but honestly, the aroma of coffee in the studio right now feels like it's mixed with just a metaphorical hint of gunpowder. Because, man, the intelligence we are exploring today is intense.
Oh, it really is. It's definitely not your standard geopolitical update.
Not at all. I mean, if you've seen the latest WSJ report, your jaw probably hit the floor right alongside mine. We are looking at the Pentagon potentially deploying 10,000 ground troops to the Middle East.
Yeah, that is a massive, massive escalation.
Right. And this is no longer just, surveillance drones buzzing around or politicians yelling on TV. We are talking about the 82nd Airborne Division. We are talking about Marine Expeditionary Units, the MEU, actively approaching the Gulf.
Which is heavy, heavy hardware. And the rumored target for all of this? Carg Island. I mean, honestly, it sounds like they're turning the Persian Gulf into a real-life mission straight out of Call of Duty.
Okay, I get the excitement, but let's step back and look at the actual mechanics here. We need some calm, analytical grounding.
Fair enough. Bring us back to reality.
So, in strict military terminology, this 10,000 troop deployment is what the Pentagon calls an expanded strategic option.
An expanded strategic option. Wow, that sounds incredibly clinical for, putting thousands of boots on the sand.
Well, it's designed to sound clinical. The strategic analysis here indicates that this physical movement of forces is meant to give Trump significantly more leverage at the negotiating table.
Ah, so it's a leverage play.
Exactly. There's this upcoming April 6th deadline, and this deployment is essentially a giant weight being slammed down on the American side of that table.
Got it. It's the ultimate flex. But our mission for this conversation is to unpack exactly why we're flexing so hard in the first place. We are calling today's topic the energy chokehold. Why Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz.
Which is the perfect title, because to understand this crisis, you really have to look at the geography.
Geography is everything, right?
It's destiny, especially in naval warfare. What is just fascinating here is how a nation that isn't traditionally considered this massive Tier 1 global superpower can essentially choke out a global economic lifeline.
Yeah, let's look at the physical reality of this strait, because if you just glance at a map on your phone, it doesn't look that small.
On a map, no. The Strait of Hormuz is about 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point.
Which seems like a lot of room.
Right, to a normal person standing on a beach, 33 kilometers of water looks like a vast open ocean. But maritime logistics tell a very different story.
Because of the size of the ships.
Exactly. You have to consider the draft, the underwater depth of these skyscraper-sized commercial oil tankers and LNG carriers.
They displace so much water.
They do. So they can't just sail anywhere. The Deepwater Channel, which is the absolute only path these commercial leviathans can take without running aground, is a mere 3 kilometers wide.
3 kilometers. Okay, let me try to contextualize that for everyone listening. Imagine you live in this massive, sprawling residential community. Thousands of homes.
Yeah, it was like the suburbs.
Yeah, totally. And everyone has cars, everyone needs to commute to keep the city running, but the entire neighborhood only has one single, extremely narrow exit alleyway leading to the highway.
Right.
And unfortunately for the rest of the world, the very end of that alleyway is essentially Iran's front porch.
That analogy is absolutely perfect. They have absolute geographic initiative. They don't need a massive American-style blue water navy to project power.
They just sit on the porch.
They literally just sit on their front porch and watch the alley.
And this is where the new data gets incredibly wild. Because Iran is reportedly playing a game of de facto toll booth.
Yeah, the toll booth strategy.
They are demanding security transit fees from certain vessels trying to pass through, and reportedly they are even asking for payment in RMB, the Chinese yuan.
Which is just a brilliant, albeit ironic, reverse application of American-style capitalism.
Right. Pay to play.
It's a calculated lose-lose scenario for the United States. Think about it. If a shipping company doesn't pay the toll, Iran simply points a coastal anti-ship missile at them.
Which obviously stops traffic immediately.
Exactly. But if the global shipping companies do pay the toll, the U.S. loses massive geopolitical face.
It's a protection racket. But wait, let me push back a bit because I think a lot of people listening are probably wondering the same thing.
Go for it.
The U.S. has overwhelming air superiority. We have aircraft carriers. Defending against 1 or 2 missiles is easy for modern destroyers, so why is this such a nightmare scenario? Why not just blow up the toll booth?
That is the logical first question. But you're imagining a conventional symmetrical war. You're picturing 2 huge navies lining up to trade shots.
Like battleships.
Right. But Iran knows they would lose that conventional fight in about an hour. So they rely entirely on swarming tactics.
Swarming. Okay, break that down for us. What does that look like?
Well, let's look at their arsenal. First, you have the missile walls. We're talking about coastal anti-ship missiles, like the domestic Noor or Qatar systems.
And these aren't just sitting out in the open, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They're hidden deep inside fortified mountain bunkers right along the coastline. It's a classic shoot-and-scoot tactic.
So they roll them out, fire a volley, and hide again.
Exactly. They fire simultaneously and roll back into the granite before a U.S. jet can even lock onto their position.
Okay, so the coast is essentially a porcupine. But what about the water itself? You read about these micro-submarines. I mean, we have the best sonar in the world, right?
We do, but the Strait of Hormuz is shallow, warm, and incredibly noisy. The acoustic physics change entirely in that environment.
How so?
Sound waves bounce erratically off the shallow seafloor. Plus, you have thermoclines, which are layers of warm surface water mixing with cooler water below.
Ah, like a mirage, but for sound.
Exactly. It physically bends and scatters the sonar waves. That creates massive acoustic shadow zones, and that is exactly where Iran operates their Ghadir-class microsubmarines.
Just waiting in the dark.
They wait right alongside fleets of high-speed boats loaded to the brim with torpedoes.
So it's an invisible threat combined with a surface rush.
Yes. Defending against 1 or 2 incoming threats is standard procedure for an Aegis destroyer. But defending against 50 suicide speedboats rushing you simultaneously from 360 degrees.
The radar just gets overwhelmed.
It gets completely saturated. It's mathematically nearly impossible to stop every single one.
Wow, 50 speedboats rushing you at once. That is terrifying.
And yet, that isn't even the most terrifying part. The absolute cheapest, most effective threat in their entire arsenal is underwater mines.
Mines. Really? That seems so, I don't know, old school.
It is old school, but the real weapon isn't the explosive itself. The real weapon is financial.
Oh, wait. Financial. How does a floating metal doll cause a financial crisis?
Because of the insurance companies. Specifically, the actuaries in London who assess maritime risk.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about the insurance.
Right. Dropping just a few dozen cheap mines into that 3-kilometer channel causes those insurance companies to instantly ban all tankers. Or they spike the premiums to mathematical absurdity.
So the ships literally just drop anchor and refuse to move.
Exactly. Sweeping for mines is painfully slow. So global energy supplies could be halted for weeks or months just because of the mere threat of a minefield.
Okay, so let's recap this nightmare. We've got mines in the water, invisible subs, swarms of speedboats, and shoot-and-scoot missiles in the mountains.
It's a layered defense.
So how does the U.S. actually solve this? Why don't we just send drones to bomb the whole thing from the sky? It feels like we're playing the world's worst game of whack-a-mole.
That whack-a-mole problem is exactly why air power has its limits. And it brings us directly to the current U.S. 3-tier clearance strategy.
Okay, walk us through this 3-tier plan. What is Phase 1?
Phase 1 is aerial surgical strikes, which is actually active currently. The U.S. uses GBU-72 bunker busters to try and blind radars and destroy the launchers.
Bunker busters are massive, right? Like thousands of pounds of explosives.
Huge. But many of these Iranian missiles are buried too deep in the solid granite rocks to hit. You just can't penetrate them from the air.
Okay, so dropping bombs doesn't completely clear the alleyway. What is Phase 2?
Phase 2 is naval escort and minesweeping. It's similar to Operation Earnest Will back in the 1980s.
Oh, where they escorted the oil tankers?
Right. They use minesweepers and unmanned underwater vehicles to clear the channel. The fatal flaw there, though.
Let me guess. The minesweepers are slow.
Incredibly slow. And they have no armor. As long as Iran's coastal artillery remains intact, U.S. minesweepers are just sitting ducks.
Right, which brings us back to my alleyway analogy. If someone is throwing thumbtacks in your driveway, shooting blindly out your second-story window isn't going to stop them permanently.
Not if they have a good hiding spot.
Exactly. Eventually, you have to actually send a security guard down to the alley to stand watch and physically stop them.
Which brings us to Phase 3, ground point clearance.
Yeah.
And this is where those 10,000 troops come in.
So they are the security guards, but where do they actually go? They can't just stand in the water.
They go to the Fortress Islands. specifically Karg Island and the Greater and Lesser Tun Islands.
Karg Island, we mentioned that at the very beginning.
Yes. Strategically, these islands act as unsinkable aircraft carriers right in the middle of the strait. Karg is vital because it handles 90% of Iran's crude oil exports.
90%, so it's literally their wallet.
It is their wallet, but for the rest of the world, it's a massive blood clot risk. Iran has heavily fortified these islands over the decades with domestic variants of the HQ-9 or S-300 anti-air systems.
So to clear it out, you actually need boots on the ground.
Exactly. Marines have to physically step onto the beaches to pull up the flags, so to speak, and dismantle the launch sites by hand.
That is intense, and the global fallout from a kinetic conflict like that has to be just staggering.
It really is. The economic shockwave would be unprecedented. Look at the data. 20% to 25% of the world's oil and massive amounts of LNG flows through this specific strait.
A quarter of the world's energy, just bottlenecked right there.
If that lane closes, Brent crude prices could spike by more than 40% almost instantly.
Over 40%. Man, quick pause here, just a mandatory required disclaimer for everyone. We are not financial advisors, and these numbers are purely for context, not investment advice.
Good catch.
But seriously, a 40% spike, you would feel that at the gas pump tomorrow. It would shock the entire system.
Absolutely. And Iran is well aware of this leverage. They're not backing down quietly at all.
Have they said anything officially about the U.S. troop movements?
Yes. Their parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, has publicly warned that if a single U.S. boot touches their territory, Iran will launch what he called uninterrupted attacks.
Uninterrupted attack.
On all pro-U.S. facilities in the region.
That is a terrifying counter-threat. But I have to push back here, or at least ask the big question. We are in 2026. Nobody can afford a 10-year ground war right now.
No. The political appetite for that is zero.
So is this massive troop movement just a giant 10,000-man hammer placed on the negotiation table? Is it just an incredibly expensive bluff?
It is a high-stakes gamble. Remember that April 6th deadline we talked about?
Yeah.
That deadline is exactly that. It's a pressure tactic. The U.S. is basically saying, dismantle the toll booth before we come in and do it for you.
So it's about making the threat of a ground invasion credible enough that Iran just takes the diplomatic off-ramp.
Exactly. It's deterrence through an overwhelming show of potential force.
Wow. So briefly recapping this crazy geopolitical gridlock, we've got one side locking the door for their own survival, demanding polls.
Right.
And the other side needing to literally kick that door down just to keep the world running. I just really, really hope the current negotiations work before troops actually hit the sand.
We all do. The alternative is just too costly.
I want to leave you, our Sip&Talkers, with a final provocative thought to mull over today. Put yourself in the shoes of a commercial oil tanker captain right now.
Oh, I can't even imagine the stress.
You're steering this massive, slow-moving ship. You're staring at potentially active mines in the water below you, missiles hidden in the cliffs right next to you, and Marines in your rearview mirror.
Talk about being caught in the middle.
It is enough to make you wish a commercial ship was nuclear-powered, just so you could dive underwater and never have to transit that narrow alleyway ever again.
Submarine cargo haulers. Now that is a tech startup idea right there.
Seriously. Before we wrap up, we want to provide a warm, clear reminder that Sip&Talk does not discriminate against or criticize any nation, group, or people.
Right. This exploration was strictly an objective analysis of the facts on the ground.
Exactly. Maintaining our core mission of promoting independent, critical thinking for all of you. Also, please remind yourselves to hit subscribe to the Sip&Talk podcast so you never miss a conversation.
Yes, please subscribe.
And hey, we want to give a very friendly shout out to our mutual old friend, Mickey. You definitely need to check out his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life, to see his latest travel vlogs.
His stuff is amazing. It's the perfect palate cleanser after heavy geopolitics.
It really is. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. Say goodbye until the next one.
Bye, everyone.